Hello, I'm Esther Vida in downtown Andover, Massachusetts, home of the is it not so or not too stuffy? Not too stuffy law show. We're here to find out just what people think of the not too stuffy law show. What do you think of the not too stuffy law show?
Never heard of it.
Are you interested in it?
No, I'm not.
What do you think of the not too stuffy law show?
It sounds like it might be a good show. I would like to see it. I haven't seen it yet.
What do you think of the not too stuffy law show?
Oh, I've never heard of that.
What do you think of the not too stuffy law show?
I'm sorry, I don't even know anything about the show. I've never heard about it.
That's a nice name, actually. The Not Too Stuffy Night Show?
The not too stuffy law show.
Law Show.
Have you heard of Attorney St.James?
I have not.
What do you guys think of the not too stuffy law show?
I don't know what that is.
I'm sure it's awesome, but I don't know what it is either.
But it's not too stuffy.
I like this. I like this little Not Too Stuffy. Is this going to be, is this an actual TV show or is this like really?
What do you think of the not too stuffy law show?
I think it sounds good, but I've actually never seen it. What is it?
So what do you think of the not too stuffy law show?
Oh my God. The only show where I can actually laugh with an attorney on there. Attorney St. James is the best. Hilarious.
Well, there you go, Attorney St. James.
Am I getting paid, right?
Someone who's actually heard about your show. Back to you in the studio.
When you're ready.
Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Not Too Stuffy Law Show. I'm your host, Attorney Justin St. James. For the next half hour, we hope to entertain, inform, and enlighten you. And if we don't, you should probably be watching The Real Housewives of wherever they're all from. Atlanta, I have no idea, and I really couldn't care less. But I do want to welcome the studio audience. Looks like we have a real clown in the audience. We start off this program with a discussion on circumstantial evidence, what it is and how it was used to solve a murder mystery in the 1950s. I then continue my conversation on privacy with Officer Chuck Edgerly of the Andover Police Department. Officer Edgerly will discuss what your privacy rights are in the public schools, your home, and what Miranda Rights are all about. So stick around, there's a lot to learn and you'll have a good time. Up first, I talk with a couple of real dummies about circumstantial evidence.
Circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence is A, evidence that's a victim of circumstances, B, in some religions, the part of a male baby that gets sniffed off, or C, evidence based on inference and not on personal knowledge or observation. And the answer is A. Well, okay, the answer is C, evidence based on inference and not on personal knowledge or observation.
Oh, hi, Mr. St. James. What are you doing?
Good, how you doing? Good. I'm just reading this old case from a long, long time ago.
Oh, what's it about?
Well, actually, it's about a murder. Yeah, Frederica. Frederica, where'd you go?
Hello, Justin. How are you, huh?
Good. Do you know if Frederica's okay?
I'm sure she's just taking a little nap, huh?
You think so? All right, okay.
What are you doing, huh?
Well, actually, I'm reading this, like I was saying to Frederica, I'm just reading this old case from a long, long time ago.
Oh, so what's it about, huh?
Well, actually, it's about a murder. Grandma? You okay?
Oh, my goodness.
That's all right.
Oh.
That's okay. So, but it took place in England a long, long time ago. Do you want me to tell you about it?
Oh, that'd be nice, huh?
All right. Well, like I said, it's a case about a murder. It's okay. It's okay.
It take place in England, huh?
In England, yes. Have you ever been to England?
No.
No.
But
all right. Yeah.
I know about the Beatles, huh?
Oh, you do? Okay.
I want to hold your hand.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
You're a wonderful singer, Grandma.
Oh, thank you.
But anyway, so these two farmers, actually, they came from Poland. And they wanted to set up a farm in England. Anybody in your family ever have a farm?
Yes, and my grandfather. Huh?
Really? Okay. What kind of a farm did he have?
Oh, well, he was going to raise grapes.
Grapes. You raise grapes. Okay. You mean grow grapes?
Yes, he was going to grow grapes and he was going to make wine.
Wine. Oh, good for him. Okay. And how did that work out?
Not so good.
Not so good? Why? What's wrong?
Well, you see, he and his friends, they want to sample the wine, huh?
Ah.
And then they drink it all up.
Ah, okay. So there was no wine to sell.
No.
All right. Well, these guys in the story had a regular farm. They had like chickens and pigs and sheep and goats and cows and all that good stuff. And the farm wasn't doing very well. That's the only
Well,
problem.
that's not too bad, huh?
Yeah. So one farmer had the idea, well, why don't we sell the farm and go back to Poland?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, thank you. And then the other farmer said, well, why don't we try to borrow money somewhere and keep the farm going?
That's another good idea.
Yeah, but unfortunately, he wasn't able to find someone who could lend him the money. He went to banks, he went to other friends and everywhere.
I know.
And it was
It's
tough
hard,
trying to, so it was tough trying to find someone or some place that'll loan him the money. So one day in around mid-December, actually it was December 14, the farmer who wanted to sell the farm disappeared. Yeah, was never seen again. Yeah. In fact, the last person to see him was a blacksmith, because on December 14, he went to pick up his horse. The blacksmith was putting shoes on the horse, and the farmer who wanted to sell the farm went to pick up the horse. And so the authorities came around and they asked the other farmer, they say, hey, where's the other guy? Where did the other farmer go? And he said, I don't know. Maybe he went back to Poland. Maybe he got kidnapped. Maybe this is an extortion scheme. Maybe he went to the doctors. He was making up all these excuses. And what he did was, which was kind of not nice, he went to the blacksmith and he said, listen, if the police come by, can you tell them that you saw the other farmer on December 17th?
That's telling a lie.
Yeah, that's not very nice, is it?
No, that's not good. Huh?
Now, you tell your children to tell the truth, right?
But of course.
I'm sure they're good children, too.
I hope so.
I'm sure they are. So anyway, so he wanted the blacksmith to lie, and he was making up all these excuses of what could have happened to the other farmer, and nothing seemed to really fit together. And what they also found was they found blood on the kitchen counter, which belonged to the other farmer. So the authorities arrested the farmer who was left behind. They arrested him and charged him with murder. Yeah. And so what they did was they put a case together based on what they call circumstantial evidence.
What kind of evidence is circumscription, circumcision? What kind of?
Well, it's circumstantial evidence. Well, I'll read you the definition. It comes right out of the dictionary.
Oh, that would help. It's very confusing, huh?
Yeah, it really can be. Circumstantial evidence is evidence based on inference and not on personal knowledge or observation. So let me give you an example. Do you like to bake pies, Grandma?
Yeah, very good. I'm very good.
What's your favorite pie that you like to bake?
Oh, apple.
Apple, okay. Well, let's pretend that you've just baked a beautiful apple pie.
No.
No.
Blueberry.
Blueberry, okay. Let's pretend that you just baked a beautiful blueberry.
No. I think strawberry.
Strawberry, okay. Let's pretend that you just baked a beautiful strawberry pie.
No.
No strawberry.
Cinnamon.
Cinnamon, okay.
Do you like cinnamon?
I love cinnamon, yes, thank you. So you're sure about the cinnamon? We're going to make this a cinnamon pie. No.
I think you're right. Apple.
Apple, all right.
I always make apple pies.
Apple pie, but
I
they're
just
delicious.
made an apple pie.
Did you really?
Yes.
Well, let's pretend that you just made the apple
Yes,
pie.
I did.
And let's pretend that you and everybody else in the family wants to go see the movie.
Yeah.
So you take the pie and you put it in the oven to keep it warm. And then everyone leaves to go to the movies except for Frederica.
Yeah.
Frederica wants to stay behind and she wants to play with her video games.
That's about the truth.
That's about right, okay. So you go to the movies and you have a good time and you come back, but when you look in the oven, the pie is gone. I know. So you say, where did the pie go?
I say that Frederica eat the pie.
Well,
That's what I say.
Well, you could say that, but there's no pie. So you go and you look in the oven again and there's no pie.
No pie.
And you look in the kitchen sink and there's an empty pie dish and you see a fork and a knife. And you go to Frederica and she's got maybe pie all over her face.
That's true.
But you don't have a pie. You really don't have the pie itself, so you base it on what they call circumstantial evidence. You put the pieces together and you say, Frederica, you must have been the one to eat the pie.
I think that's true.
All right. So that's basically what circumstantial evidence is, kind of sort of. It doesn't always work. I mean, you really need really good evidence in a case, but every once in a while you can use circumstantial evidence and you can succeed, like they did in this MURDER case. Yeah. So are you sure Frederica's okay? Do you want to wake her up?
Why don't we wake her up?
All right, we'll see what she's doing.
Just wake up that girl.
All right.
Frederica.
So Frederica, you okay?
Oh, wow. I just had a dream. I dreamed I was eating an apple pie. Ah, Mamma Mia, I told you. She's the one that ate the apple pie.
Grandma, why don't you make another pie for Frederica? Would that be okay? What do you think?
She looks kind of sad, huh?
Yeah.
Frederica, would you make me another apple pie, Grandma? Of course, of course. I love to make apple pies. Huh?
All right, ladies, thank you. My thanks to Judith O'Hare and her company, You and Me Puppets, out of Reading, Massachusetts, for her help with that last segment. At this time, I'd like to check in with the studio audience. Violet, what do you think of the show so far? Violet, there's no juggling during the show. Violet, can you not do that right now? Don't do that. Thank you. If you watched episode 6, and I'm sure you did, you saw the first half of my discussion on privacy issues with Officer Chuck Edgerly. We're happy to bring you the second half of that discussion right now. What is the difference between, actually, before I ask that question, since we're in a public setting, high schools, public schools, students have no expectation of privacy. Or do they? I assume they think they have expectation of privacy, but they don't really, do they?
They think they do, and I think that answer could go a few different ways.
Depends on the
it depends. It depends on the situation. My understanding is, if the administration has their own reasonable suspicion that, something's being kept in a locker or going on in a classroom, they're able to, do a search of their own. But I do not. I'm not positive, so don't quote me on this. I don't think they can just walk around with a, skeleton key and just start opening up lockers to check. They do bring in the police dogs every once in a while, maybe once a year. Our officer, Mickey Connor, and his dog Nico are on a regional team, and it seems like once a month, twice a month, they're at a school somewhere in the region, and they bring in, 10, 12, 13 police dogs that are trained to sniff drugs, and they'll do a lockdown procedure, like a drill, if you would. And during that lockdown, the dogs walk around and they basically sniff the lockers, and if they smell something, they sit on it, and then either the school or police or both would take action on whatever they end up finding.
And they do that as a standard practice?
It's a standard practice. It's done randomly and maybe once, twice a year locally.
Okay. Interesting. Now, what is the difference between an investigation and interrogation?
An investigation and interrogation. I
say
usually
you call. I'm going to give you a scenario. Say you
Sure.
call a high school student's parents and they say, "Can John come to the police station? We just want to ask him a couple of questions."
Right. I mean, we're conducting an investigation. When you have an investigation can be broken down into an interview and an interrogation. An interrogation would be more towards the individual that is your most likely suspect or group of suspects. An interview would be geared towards a witness or a victim or somebody that you think is involved, but maybe not. You have a slight hunch, but not to the point that you're sure that this person is involved.
Okay. So you, in our opening scenario, then you have a high school student. He comes down and he's talking about. You're talking to Jim and you're saying, "Gee, we found out about somebody might have had some drugs in their locker," and he says, "Yeah, I had some marijuana in my locker too." At what point do you arrest him? Do you call his parents in?
Depending on their age, if
Say
they're under
17.
17, well, usually with the school, they call the parents in for anything like that, just because of the setting. If they're saying they had marijuana, but if there isn't any actual evidence, can we check your locker? And they say, yes, you can go ahead, check my locker, or the school already checked it and didn't find anything, then it really isn't a police issue at that point. It would be more of a school issue.
All right. What are, I know what Miranda Rights are, but why don't you explain it for me? You're the expert. What are Miranda Rights?
Miranda Rights are given to an individual that, and it's very important to listen to the terminology, that are either under arrest or that person or a reasonable person would assume that they're under arrest or unable to leave during our interrogation or interview, depending on how they classify it. They're rights that we give because the questions that we're going to be asking are going to be of an incrimination style. We're going to ask the person about a particular crime and about the situation surrounding the crime. And the courts have ruled that Miranda must be given in certain circumstances so that the individual knows that they do not have to answer the questions without consulting an attorney. And if the person cannot afford an attorney, then an attorney will be appointed for them. Miranda has gone all over the place with the news over the last 5 or 6 years because there were some cases where Miranda was not given, and the individual that was being questioned had been arrested or charged numerous times. This wasn't a local case. And what the court system through the trial tried to say was, well, the person's been through this enough that they know what their Miranda rights are and they didn't need to be Mirandized. It was basically a mistake on the officer's part that was handling the interview. And the courts, after going back and forth from the Court of Appeals up to Superior Court or wherever it ended up going, basically said, every individual case, no matter how many times they've been Mirandized, they have to be Mirandized again. So if somebody has, 7 or 8 arrests for shoplifting each time they were Mirandized, and here it is, the next time, even though they've already heard it 6 or 7 times before, we are required to issue it to them again prior to asking.
So going back to our interview versus interrogation, if you're interviewing someone and you hear something that could lead to more evidence or lead to evidence, then do you read the person his Miranda rights at that point?
It depends. I mean, we have to weigh a lot in a very short amount of time. And one of the things we have to weigh is, is the person that we're talking to, are they free to leave? Do they think that they're free to leave?
Well, someone sitting in a police station
probably doesn't have different.
Probably doesn't have the impression that he's free to leave.
Right, and what the courts have said, it's the appearance or what the suspect or the person that's being questioned, it's what they perceive as opposed to what we know in our minds is what's going on. We were always, initially told that when they're under arrest, when you place them under arrest, that boom, that's when Miranda kicks in. You can pretty much ask them anything you want up to that point. The courts have said no, if you're at a scene, you're at a call, there's 3 or 4 people, you're in the station, whatever, and it doesn't, the reasonable person doesn't feel like they have the right to leave and they believe that they're going to be arrested, then you have to weigh that in your head as an officer and issue with Miranda sooner than you normally would have from earlier trainings. And I've seen it happen. Things will go to motions through court. They'll try to suppress statements because the individual should have been Mirandized. The officer said, well, the person wasn't under arrest or formally arrested at that point. And then the questions were, was the guy free to leave? And the officer said, well, no, we were just finishing the questioning, but I was going to arrest him for drunk driving anyway. And the judge ended up throwing out all the statements that were made from the end of field sobriety tests up until the person was, in fact, Mirandized back at the police station. And it had to do with operation. There wasn't any actual witnessed operation by the officers of the vehicle, so the operation was constructive. We still got a conviction on it, though.
That's good. All right, we've talked about automobiles, we've talked about on foot.
Sure.
Let's talk about the home. I think that's probably one of the most important places, too.
Right.
When can an officer search a person's home, a private home?
Well, we all say that a man's home is his castle. Yep. And in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, that's pretty much the way it goes. The three things that we need to get into a house or into anything really is probable cause, a warrant, which the warrant is usually based on probable cause.
And it has to be specific.
It has to be very specific. Consent, obviously. We come knocking at the door, which we don't just come knocking to people's doors. Hey, can we search your house today? We thought it would be a nice day to search your house. Or an exigency, an emergency exception, which is very, very, very rare. And what the courts have ruled is that the police cannot create the emergency exception to get into a house by being present and creating the emergency. For instance, somebody walking around, an officer walking around an apartment complex out in the common area that anybody could walk in, so there really isn't any privacy there, happens to be walking around, looks into a basement window for an apartment, sees people putting together cocaine bags with scales and everything else. They see him, they immediately start flushing stuff down the drain. The officer tried to bust in and handle it right then and there because he saw it happen and saw that they were disposing of the evidence at the time. The courts have ruled that a situation like that, the emergency exception rule does not come in because the officer created that. If he saw what was going on and they didn't see him, he would have had ample time to get a warrant based on his observations and then come back and do a proper search of the facility. The warrant requirement, again, probable cause is what's needed for a warrant. Officer would have to write up an affidavit based on what he knows about a crime that he believes is being committed or has been committed or is going to be committed. He has to know a little bit actually quite a bit specific information regarding why he believes evidence to the crime is being created, housed, destroyed, or whatever inside the house. The warrants, when they're issued, are usually limited to scope based on what you're looking for. If you know that or have good information that somebody in a house is selling stolen 46-inch LCD televisions, and that's what you get your warrant for, then that's the size of object that you're supposed to be looking for. When you go to serve that warrant, you can't be opening up drawers in bedrooms because there's no way you could fit a 46-inch TV in a drawer. So warrants can be limiting also.
But there is also plain view. If you walk in looking for TVs and you see a submachine gun
Correct.
on the desk.
Sure. Say, heroin, drugs, anything like that at all. If we are in the person's house, residence legally, and we see anything while we're in there outside of what the warrant scope is in plain view, then yes, we can take action on it.
Now, does a person's home include his garage?
Depending on, what we usually consider like the level between what we can, do and what we can't do, a lot of it has to do with the threshold. And a threshold, that little piece of wood that's in between your storm door and your regular door, means a lot to the homeowner. That's the point at which if a person, officer comes to the door without a warrant, I want to come in and search your house, and you tell them no, even if I'm there to investigate something, can I come in and talk to you? No, you can talk to me at the door, or I'll talk to you out in the street, but you cannot come in my house. The officer's cannot go in the house. Garages, if a garage is attached to a house, and that's how entry to the garage would, from inside the house, you go through a breezeway or a separate door. My understanding is it would all fall under the house, even though the garage itself doesn't have its own threshold. If it has an overhead, door for a car to come in and out, if the door's shut, no different than the rest of the house, the door is shut.
And what is curtilage?
Curtilage, the curb line along the street, or where the edge of pavement would be, the place where the town property, for the most part, ends and the person's private property picks up. What we can see inside that area is considered plain view. For purposes of abandoned property, once people put their trash out or they put anything out in that area, it basically becomes free for the taking. And we do get calls every once in a while for somebody that's going through my trash, and well, sorry, but they can go through your trash because of where it is. Recycling's a little bit different. We actually have a recycling bylaw that people aren't allowed to take recycling materials out just because of the way the recycling contracts are, and they're based on weight. Separate subject, though.
Okay. So anything out in the yard that a police officer can see, even though it's within the curtilage, it can, again, it's plain view, so a police officer can go over and investigate it?
We can investigate it. We can observe it a little bit more, maybe do a little more of an investigation than just seeing something and then, knocking at the door.
Okay.
It's really no different than, for instance, a house, say, that's being used as a point of sale for illegal narcotics. We see a lot of cars going in and out. We don't just go and, bust the door down or go try to get our warrant. We do an investigation, and sometimes an investigation into activity at a house, especially involving drugs, can take months. Could only take weeks. It all depends on the activity going on. But, something that's seen in plain view, activity that's seen in plain view, if it's not, somebody that's out front that's building a nuclear bomb, that plain view and something that requires immediate attention, the officers will do a little bit more of a background investigation before taking action.
And if the police should take an item from a person's home, say it's a computer, that they're suspicious, there's something on the computer that the police want to find out about in the hard drive, how long can they confiscate that for? How long can they hold on to this person's personal property?
To my understanding, the property can be held until the case is dismissed or disposition is made at court. So if it's something that we have a warrant because there's information on somebody's hard drive, whether it's child pornography, whether it's business files for somebody that might be embezzling off of their company, we have a special team, people that are trained in search and seizure of computers. They'll go in, they'll secure the device, do whatever they need to do with it to see whatever information that they're trying to find, if it's actually on there or not. And then whether the computer goes back right away or not, I'm sure it's a case-by-case basis, but I've seen equipment, computers, other personal property held until the end of trial. And then at the end of trial, depending on the disposition of the case, it'll either be returned to the person, the items may be destroyed. It all depends on the circumstances.
So to sum it all up, I guess what we'd say is that there's an expectation, the expectation of privacy has to be reasonable, and that's basically the guideline for just about everything.
Everything is based on reasonable,
Yeah.
and that can go, what you think is reasonable may not necessarily be what I think is reasonable.
Sure.
I believe that's why juries are set up the way they are.
There was a case that we studied in law school about a gentleman who made a phone call. Back then, they had phone booths back then, folks, believe it or not. We actually went into a booth and you closed the door behind you. It was made out of probably plastic or glass, and you could make a telephone call. And the authorities actually bugged the phone because they knew that the person was up to no good. But the court ruled that they couldn't use the evidence, they couldn't use the phone conversation because the person in the telephone booth had an expectation of privacy, even though it was a public phone.
Correct. It would fall under the same wiretap laws that we still would have today.
But of course, today people are walking around with cell phones. They're walking, and they may think they're having a private conversation because they're lost in their own thoughts. But in fact, if you're walking down the street with a cell phone, it's fair game. Anybody can hear it.
If anybody can hear it, that's different.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can hear it reasonably without me having to sneak up behind you and put my ear next to the phone without you knowing, that's one thing. But we have a lot of folks. The Nextel two-way cell phone conversations were very popular up until probably 5 or 6 years ago, and it was actually very annoying because you'd hear them beep beep beep, and they'd be talking back and forth. And but you're in a public setting, everybody can hear it. You've basically negated your privacy by allowing everyone to listen to your conversation. Now, if with an earpiece up on the phone itself, I may not be able to hear what the other person's saying. But if it's, we're within a reasonable distance and I can hear everything that you're saying, we're not walking around in the cone of silence. So, if it's a public setting, then it would be considered a public conversation. At least one part of that would be a public conversation.
Excellent. You've been very informative. I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for coming on to the
Thanks for having
show.
me. Very good.
Thank you. And that's our show for now. Thank you for watching. I'd like to thank the studio audience for being here. She reminds me of some of the judges I've been in front of. As we always do, we leave you with the beautiful music of the equally beautiful Sarah Melson. You may find Sarah's music on Amazon, iTunes, iLike, eMusic, Facebook, and of course, sarahmelson.com. The name of the song is Happy Endings. Until next time, I hope everything you do will come to a happy ending. I'll see you then.
Never realized how badly I needed to be surprised. You kissed me with your eyes, it was then I knew. Now I'm 1,000 miles away, waiting for the first light of day. And the way I'm feeling is oh so new. And I believe in happy endings, and I only see the good in you. And I believe the world is worth mending. I think that you do too. I know that you're an optimist. You're pretty impossible to resist. And I know you've been used for all your well. It's okay, you can take my